like everything, you know, stereotypes save time, and there is a percentage of comic book fans that are very like comic book guy from The Simpsons, for example. But I mean, that's not the stereotypical comics fan. The stereotypical comics fan is, well, just pan your camera around Kapow or the shop. It's anything and everything, all age groups, all races, with varying levels of intellect and varying levels of social inadequacies.
Traditionally, for a teenage girl, the first comic you read is Gambit and X-Men, but it was Gambit and the Externals then.
Like, my parents would never buy me comics, but I remember there being comics at friends' houses that I would borrow and things like that.
My real sort of comics awakening was in the very early 90s, reading a British science fiction anthology comic called 2000 AD. And it was full of blood and guts. It was full of very interesting science concepts, and it was full of high drama and high emotion.
There's a whole like English line of reprints, so where they do like Marvel Classics, DC Classics, and the first one I was probably, as they were building up to Nightfall, I think they reprinted Year One by Frank Miller and Mazzucchelli, and I think that was probably one of the first ones I read, which is very lucky, because it's awesome.
It was The Watchmen, and that's when it sort of had been out for a few years, and my uncle, being the reckless bastard that he is, literally threw it into my hand as a child. I didn't understand a word of it, but it just looked enticing.
In any kind of narrative form, whether that be prose fiction, poetry, static art, film, on television or in cinema, comics is the thing that both intellectually and emotionally stimulates me the most.
Because as a medium, I think it's got several things going for it in terms of exploration of ideas. So first of all, sequential art is the only medium where you can achieve continuous perfection. So every single frame can be perfect if you have the time and you put the effort in, which is something no other art form, in my opinion, can really replicate. Obviously, you know, still lifes, paintings can, but you don't have that sense of motion and progress. The other thing is that because anything's possible in a comic, because they're fictional worlds, because the bounds of normal science and reality don't apply, you can create metaphors on a spectacular scale that you can't necessarily get away with in more conventional forms, where people would have to fill in the blanks for themselves with their own minds.
Because with comic books, it's one of those things you can have it online, but you need a store. You need to talk to the people, and 9 times out of 10 they want to talk to you back. They want to talk about their favourite comic. They'll just want to come in and rant about stuff they've seen, or they want to just come in and bug the piss out of you. You know, it's that sort of personalisation that they come to look for.
Comics are not as universally liked as football, beer, various other things. So you're always in kind of a tacit minority when you're a comics fan.
Between the hardcore sort of comic book fans, there is a sort of a stigma for Forbidden Planet that has become quite a toy shop now, and it doesn't cater to the real die-hard fans. They don't have a back issue section anymore. That they have a lot more toys. They're just there to throw new comics at you, get their money and go. They've lost the personal touch.
We don't bother with back issues because that's not where the money is for us. We're so big, we stock everything. We've got the toys and the books and the graphs and the recent issue comics that you need space to develop back issues. So there's still niche markets for littler shops. We just kind of make it a bit more accessible to people who wouldn't know about comics.
People who like figures are a type unto themselves, and it's almost a separate interest to comics, that they overlap, but it's distinct.
But I mean, you can't not have Star Wars figures in a comic shop, really, can you? I don't think it would be allowed.
The thing about comics is that when you have up to 80 years of continuity, people who get in, they may get into the modern stuff, and this is how it happened with me, was I got into the stuff that was going on at the time in 2002, so Hush, the Batman storyline, that's what I got into, but then I wanted to know more about the character. I wanted to know more about the references that were made, the allusions that were made in the script, in the artwork, and in that sense, the only way you can really do that is back issues. You can do it with trades, but again, trades, they only get published for things that are at a particular level of commercial success in the here and now. So back issues will always be they'll always be the source. We're not just like trying to churn out as many comics as we can. We're not just trying to flog stuff to people. It's also about, you know, the reason we have all this stuff displayed on the walls is not just so that people can buy them, although hopefully they will. It's also so people can, you know, you look around and this is like a visual history of comics up on the walls here. And that's what we're all about, is whatever kind of comics you like, whatever art forms you're into, come here, we're into them as well. And if we're not, we're interested to know about them. You know, so it's about community.
Yeah, we recommend Orbital and Goshen stuff, and staff will like apply for here that have worked in them, and we'd never not hire them because they'd work somewhere else like that. They're going to know more about comics if they've worked in another comic shop, so they'd probably be more likely to.
There's a kind of secret drinks night on a certain day of the month in a certain pub where like a lot of the people who work in comics, both making comics and retailing, get together for a drink once a month. So that is, I would say, yes, there is an undeniable sense of community, but with definitely friendly rivalry.
The best thing for comics recently, to go the other way, has just been movies. And as long as people keep making movies of comics, people will keep going to comics, but it just, we'll have to wait and see if they're on paper or on an iPad, I suppose.
Me personally, I'm a child of the last days of paper. I would much rather hold something tactile and papery in my hands, but you know, digital revolution is here and it's coming, it's inevitability. So yeah, I think it's a good thing, and hopefully it will just mean that more comics are more easily produced, more easily disseminated amongst the populace, and hopefully there'll be some interesting new styles of narrative and art that go with this.